The Wind in the Willows. The Riverbank, Chapter 1. Mole had been working very hard all morning, spring cleaning his little underground home. He was tired and his back hurt, and now something was calling him from above. Spring was moving in the air, and suddenly Mole could not stand to be inside for one more minute. I understand how Mole feels, Grandpa. He threw down his broom. It was time to get outside. He scraped and scratched and scrabbled and screwed, digging busily with his little paws and muttering to himself, up we go, until at last, pop, he came out into the sunlight. And he was rolling in the warm grass of a big meadow. This is wonderful, he said. This is better than cleaning. Mole felt sunshine and soft breezes. He heard the birds singing. He jumped up and ran joyfully all the way across the meadow to the hedge that ran along the far side. Spring was bursting out everywhere. Everyone else in the meadow was very busy, but Mole thought that it made even more fun to be free. And then he came to the edge of the river. Mole had never seen a river before. It glinted and gleamed and sparkled as it ran, full of bubbles and swirls in motion. Right away, Mole loved it. He trotted along the side of the river until he was tired. As he rested on the grassy shore, he noticed a dark hole in the opposite bank. He thought dreamily about what a nice, snug home it would make. Then he saw a face, a little brown face with whiskers, small neat ears, and thick silky hair. It was a water rat. Hello, Mole, said the rat. Would you like to come over? Oh, yes, but how? Asked Mole. The rat bent over and unfastened a rope. Then he stepped into a little blue and white boat. It was just the perfect size for two animals. Rat rowed across the river and helped Mole into the boat. What a wonderful day, said Mole as Rat started rowing again. Do you know I've never been in a boat before in my whole life? Rat was shocked. It's nice, said Mole as he leaned back in his seat and felt the boat sway lightly under him. Nice, it's the only thing, said Rat as he rowed. Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing better than simply messing about in boats. Simply messing, he went on dreamily. Messing about in boats. Messing. Look out, Rat, cried Mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat ran right into the bank. Dreamy Rat lay on his back in the bottom of the boat, his heels up in the air. About in boats, Rat went on, picking himself up with a laugh. I'll show you. Why don't we spend a day on the river? Mole waggled his toes and gave a happy sigh. What a day I'm having, he said. Let's start right away. Hold on a minute, said Rat. He tied up the boat, climbed into his hole, and came back out, carrying a big picnic basket. What's inside? Asked Mole, wriggling with curiosity. There's cold chicken, replied Rat. Cold ham, cold beef, pickles, rolls, cheese, and sandwiches, lemonade, soda. Oh, stop, cried Mole. This is too much. Do you really think so? Asked Rat. The other animals are always telling me I don't bring enough. He set the picnic basket in the center of the boat and began to row again. Mole was so happy. He leaned back and let his paw trail in the sparkling, rippling water. Rat just rowed on, letting him dream. So you really live on the river, Mole asked finally. What a wonderful life. By it and with it and on it and in it, said Rat. My brother and sister to me and company and food and drink and washing. It's my world. I don't want any other. Winter, summer, spring, or autumn, it's always fun and exciting. But isn't it lonely sometimes, Mole asked, just you and a river and no one else to talk to? No one else to talk to, Rat smiled. You are new. You don't know. The riverbank is so crowded nowadays. Otters, kingfishers, ducks, everybody's busy and happy. What's over there? Asked Mole, waving a paw towards a dark forest on one side of the river. That's the wild woods, said Rat. We don't go there very much, we riverbankers. What are the animals like there? Asked Mole a little nervously. Well, replied Rat, let me see. The squirrels are all right, and the rabbits, some of them anyway. And then there's Badger, of course. He lives right in the heart of it. Nobody bothers him. They better not. Who would bother him? Asked Mole. Well, there are weasels and foxes and so on, said Rat. I'm friends with some of them. But you can't really trust them, and that's a fact. And what's past the wild wood? Mole asked. Past the wild wood is the wide world, said Rat. I've never been there, and I'm never going. You shouldn't either. Now then, here's our lunch place. Rat turned the boat into a quiet pool with grassy green banks. It was so beautiful that Mole could only gasp. Oh my. Rat tied up the boat, helped Mole step out, and lifted the picnic basket onto the shore. Mole wanted to unpack it by himself, and Rat was happy to let him. He lay on the grass and rested while his excited friend spread out the tablecloth and took everything out of the basket. Oh my, Mole said when he saw all the food. When their picnic basket was ready, Rat said, help yourself, old fella. Mole was glad to. He was very hungry. What are you looking at? Asked Rat after they'd been eating for a while. I am looking, said Mole, at a streak of bubbles moving along the water. Bubbles? Aha, said the Rat. He made a little noise. A wide, shiny nose showed itself above the water, edge of the bank. An otter hauled himself out of the river and shook the water from his coat. Rat introduced Mole to Otter. "Nice to meet you," said Otter. "Such a day," he went on. "Everyone is out on the river today. I came up here to try to get a moment's peace." There was a rustle from the hedge behind him, and a stripy head peeked out. "Come on, old Badger," shouted Rat. Badger trotted forward a step or two, then grunted. Company." He turned his back and disappeared. "We won't see any more of him today," said Rat. "Well, tell us, Otter, who's out on the river?" "Toad's out," replied Otter in his brand new boat. "New clothes, new everything." The two animals looked at each other and laughed. "Once it was nothing but sailing," said Rat. "Then he got bored with that. Last year it was houseboating, now it's rowing." Just then Toad rowed by, splashing as he worked the oars. Rat called and waved, but Toad was concentrating too hard on rowing to answer back. The three animals talked for a little longer. Then Otter dove back into the river and disappeared, leaving a stream of bubbles on the water. Soon it was time to go. The afternoon sun was getting low as Rat rowed gently homeward. Mole was getting restless. "Ratty, please, I want to row now," he said suddenly. Rat shook his head with a smile. "Wait until you've had a few lessons. It's not as easy as it looks." Mole was quiet for a minute or two, but he began to feel more and more jealous of Rat, rowing so easily along. He knew he could do it just as well. He jumped up, grabbed the oars, knocked Rat out of the way. Mole tried to row, but completely missed the water. His legs flew over his head, and he found himself lying on top of Rat in the bottom of the boat. He grabbed at the side of the boat, and the next moment, sploosh, over went the boat. Oh my, how cold the water was, and how very wet it felt as Mole sank and rose and sank again. Then a paw grabbed him by the back of the neck. It was Rat, and he was laughing. Rat helped Mole to shore, hauled him out, and then sat down on the bank to dry out. Then Rat dove into the water again to save the boat and the picnic basket. Finally, they got back into the boat. "Ratty," said Mole, "I am so sorry. Will you forgive me?" He felt so embarrassed and ashamed, of course. "Of course," said Rat. "Listen, why don't you come to my house and stay with me for a while? My house isn't fancy like Toad's, but it's very comfortable. I'll teach you how to row and swim." Alicia, I'm reading. "I'll teach you how to row and swim." Mole couldn't believe his ears, or his luck. He was so happy he couldn't even speak. But Rat understood. When they got home, Rat lit a fire. Then he told Mole river stories till supper time. Mole listened with all of his might. After supper, Rat took a very sleepy Mole upstairs to the best bedroom. Mole fell asleep to the sound of the river lapping near his window, and the wind in the willows above. The Open Road, Chapter 2. "Ratty," said Mole one bright morning, "may I ask you a favor?" Rat was sitting on the riverbank singing a little song he'd composed about his friends the duck. He was very proud of it. It began, "All along the backwater, though the rush is tall, ducks are a-dabbling up the tails all." When Rat was making up songs, it could be hard to get his attention. Mole tried again. "Will you take me to Mr. Toad?" "Why, certainly," said Rat, jumping to his feet. "Get the boat out and we'll paddle up there right now. Toad will be happy to see us." "He must be a very nice animal," said Mole as he got into the boat and took the oars. He had learned to row very well by then. "Toad is the best of animals," replied Rat. "He can be boastful, but he's a good animal, like that Toady." Rounding a bend in the river, they saw a handsome old red brick house with green lawns rolling down to the water's edge. "That's Toad's hall," said Rat, "and that's his sailboat house where he leaves all the boats. The stables are over there. Toad is very rich, you know." Mole rowed into the boathouse. None of the boats seemed used. Rat looked around. He said, "I see. Toad must be looking tired of boating. I wonder what's next. Let's go find him. I'm sure we'll hear about it." Rat and Mole found Toad sitting outside looking at a large map that was spread on his lap. "Hooray!" he cried, jumping up. "I was just going to send a boat down the river for you, Ratty. Come inside and have something to eat." "Let's just sit for a minute, Toady," said Rat, throwing himself into a chair. Mole sat down too, and told Toad what a nice house he had. "Finest house on the whole river," cried Toad, "or anywhere else for that matter," he could not help adding. Rat nudged Mole. Toad saw him do it and turned very red. Then he burst out laughing. "I'm sorry, Ratty," he said. "I can't help boasting, and it's not a bad house, is it? Now look, you've got to help me." "It's about your rowing, I suppose," said Rat. "You still splash a lot, but with practice and some coaching—" "Oh, pooh, boating," interrupted Toad. "Silly boyish fun. I gave that up long ago. Waste of time. Come with me and I'll tell you about my wonderful new plan." He led them to the stable yard and showed him a shiny new gypsy wagon. It was canary yellow with green trim and red wheels. "This is the life," cried Toad. "A cart like this in the open road. Here today, off to somewhere tomorrow. Travel, change, interest, excitement. And this is the finest cart ever built. Come inside and look." Mole followed Toad inside the cart. Rat snorted, stuck his hands in his pockets, and stayed where he was. Inside there were sleeping bunks, a little table that folded up against the wall, a stove, bookshelves, and even a bird cage with a bird in it. Toad proudly showed everything off. "We'll have everything we need when we start out on our adventures this afternoon," he told Mole as they walked back outside. "I beg your pardon," said Rat slowly, "but did I hear you say something about we start this afternoon?" Now, dear Ratty, said Toad, you have to come. I can't manage without you. So don't argue. You can't stick to your boring old river life. I want to show you the world. Dear Ratty, said Toad, you have to come. I can't manage without you, so don't argue. You can stick to your boring old river all your life. I want to show you the world. I don't care, said Rat. I'm not coming, and that's that. I'm going to stick to my boring old river, and Mole's going to stick with me. Aren't you, Mole? Oh, of course I am, said Mole loyally. I'll always stick with you, Rat. Still, it sounds as if our journey might have been fun. Rat felt bad. He wanted Mole to be happy. Toad was watching both of them closely. Come in and have some lunch, he said, and we'll talk it over. We don't have to decide right away. During lunch, Toad ignored Rat and tried to persuade Mole. He talked about how wonderful life would be on the open road, until Mole was so excited he could hardly sit still. Rat couldn't stand to disappoint his friends, so by the end of lunch it was decided. They were going. After lunch, they hitched up the horse and set off. It was a golden afternoon. Birds called to them cheerily, and the rabbits they passed held up their paws and said, "Oh my!" Later, tired and happy and miles from home, they stopped and ate supper. Sitting on the grass by the side of the cart, Toad talked about all of his plans. Well, the stars came out, and Yellow Moon rose to keep them company. At last, they climbed into their little bunks in the cart. "Well, good night," Toad said. "This is life. Talk about your old river." "I don't talk about my river," said Rat. "I think about it," he added quietly. "I think about it all the time." Mole reached out from under his blanket, felt for Rat's paws in the darkness, and gave it a squeeze. "I'll do whatever you like, Ratty," he whispered. "Should we run away tomorrow morning and go back to our dear old hole in the river?" No, we'll see it out," whispered Rat. It wouldn't be safe to leave Toad alone. It won't be long. His fads never last. The end was even nearer than Rat suspected. Toad slept very late the next morning, so Mole and Rat took care of the horse and lit a fire, and washed last night's dishes, and got ready for breakfast. They were tired by the time Toad woke up, all fresh and happy and full of talk about what an easy, simple life they were living. Later they were strolling along the road when they heard a hum. Glancing back, they saw a small cloud of dust coming towards them, fast, and they heard a distant beep-beep. They paid no attention until suddenly there was a blast of wind and a whirl of sound that made them jump for the nearest ditch. The beep-beep was loud now, as a magnificent motor car thundered past in a cloud of dust. The old gray horse reared up in fear, and Toad's beautiful cart went into the ditch. Rat was furious. "You villains!" he shouted at the motor car, shaking both his fists. You road hogs! I'll report you!" Toad sat down in the middle of the dusty road and stared in the direction of the disappearing motor car. "Beep, beep," he said softly, a happy smile on his face. "Beep, beep, what a sight," he murmured. "Poetry in motion. The only way to travel. Oh, bliss. Oh, beep, beep. Oh, my. Oh, stop, Toad," cried Mole. "And to think I never knew," Toad went on. "All those years wasted, now that I know. Oh, how I'll speed along, flinging carts into the ditch as I go by. Stupid little canary-colored cart." "What are we going to do with him?" asked Mole. "Nothing," replied Rat firmly. "He has a new craze. Ignore him." Rat and Mole began to walk into town. When Toad caught up with them, Rat told him he would have to go to the police station and file a complaint and get the cart fixed. "Mole and I will find an inn, and we'll stay there until the cart is ready," he said. "Police station complaint?" cried Toad. "Me complain of that beautiful vision? Fix the cart? I'm done with carts forever." Rat turned to Mole. "You see," he said, "I give up. When we get to town, we'll take a train back to Riverbank." They got Toad back to the Toad Hall and into bed. Then Mole rowed his boat home, and he and Rat had a late supper in their cozy riverside home. The next day, Mole was sitting on the bank fishing when Rat came strolling along. "Heard the news?" he said. "Everybody's talking about it."
Yeah.
Toad went up to town and ordered a large and very expensive motor car. The Wildwood. Mole had been wanting to meet Badger, but Rat kept putting it off. "He'll turn up when he wants," he told Mole. "Couldn't you ask him for dinner?" said Mole. "He wouldn't come," replied Rat. "Badger hates society and invitations and dinner and all that." "Well then, what if we go visit him?" suggested Mole. "Oh, he wouldn't like that at all," said Rat. He's very shy. Besides, it's out of the question because he lives in the very middle of the wild wood. You just wait. He'll come along someday. The badger never came along, and when summer ended and the cold frost kept them indoors, Mole started to think about Badger again. Mole was restless because Rat's winter routine was not so exciting. In winter, Rat slept a lot. During the day, he scribbled poetry or did household chores. And there was always animals dropping in to visit and talk about their wonderful memories of summer. They talked of flowers and suns and boatings and swimmings and all the other adventures they'd had. Well, that was nice, but Mole was a little bored. So one afternoon he decided to go out alone and explore the wild wood, and maybe even meet Badger. It was a cold afternoon when he slipped out of the warm parlor where Rat was dozing. Everything looked different outside, with bare ground and no leaves on trees, but Mole liked it that way. He wasn't scared at all when he first entered the wild woods. Twigs cracked under his feet and logs tripped him. That was all fun and exciting. He went on deeper into the woods where it was darker and the trees crouched nearer and nearer. Then everything became very still. It got darker very quickly as the sun went down. Suddenly Mole began to feel a little afraid. He saw scary faces peeping out at him, and he began hearing strange whistling and pattering noises all around him. He kept moving, trying not to be frightened. Even when a rabbit ran by him and whispered, "Get out of here while you can, you fool," he kept going until he was too scared and too tired to go any further. And then he curled up in a nest of dry leaves and tried to sleep, wishing he had listened to Rat. Meanwhile, Rat dozed in his parlor until the fire crackled and woke him up. He looked around for Mole to ask him if he knew a good rhyme for something or anything other. But Mole was not there. The house seemed very quiet, and Mole didn't answer when Rat called for him. He went into the hall and saw that Mole's cap was missing from its peg and his boots were gone. Rat left the house, hoping to find Mole's tracks. There they were, sure enough, running straight into the wild woods. Rat set out to find him. It was already getting dark when he reached the first trees. He went straight into the woods looking for any sign of his friend. He saw scary little faces and heard the frightening noises, but he ignored them, calling, "Molly, Molly, Molly, where are you? It's me, the old rat." He had hunted through the wood for an hour or more when at last, to his joy, he heard a little answering cry. He made his way through the darkness to the foot of an old beech tree. "Ratty, is that you?" came a voice from inside a little hole in the tree. Rat crept into the hole, and there was Mole, exhausted and shaky. "Oh, Rat," he cried, "I've been so frightened." "Oh, I know," said Rat soothingly. "You shouldn't have come here alone, Mole. I tried to tell you." Mole started to feel better knowing that Rat was there. "Now then," said Rat, "we really should start for home while there's still a little light left. It's too cold to spend the night out here." He went to look out of the hole. "Oh dear," he said. "What's up, Ratty?" asked Mole. "Snow is up," replied Rat, "or rather down. It's snowing hard." Mole looked outside. The wild wood looked completely different, covered in a carpet of white. "Well, well," said Rat. We still have to get home. The problem is I don't know exactly where we are, and this snow makes everything look different." They set out bravely, trying to convince themselves that they were going the right way. An hour or two later, they sat down on a stump to try to catch their breath and decided what to do. They were tired and wet and bruised from falling. The snow was getting so deep that they could hardly drag their little legs through it, and the trees were thicker than ever. There seemed to be no end to the wild wood, no beginning and no way out. "We can't sit here very long," said Rat. "It's too cold and the snow is getting deeper." He looked around. "Look here, where the snow is all hilly and lumpy. We'll find some other shelter, a cave or a hole with a dry floor, out of the snow and wind. We can rest there and then try again." So they got up and looked around one of the hilly areas. Suddenly Mole tripped and fell. "Oh, my leg!" he cried. He sat up in the hole, holding his leg. "Poor old Mole," said Rat. "Let's see." He bent down to look. "You've cut your shin for sure enough. I'll bandage it with my handkerchief." "I must have tripped over a hidden branch or stump," said Mole miserably. "It's a very clean cut," said Rat, looking at it closely as he bandaged it. "That wasn't done by a tree or a stump. It looks as if it was made by a sharp edge of something metal. Funny." He thought for a while and looked around. "Who cares what did it?" Mole said. "It just hurts." But Rat was busy scraping in the snow. He scraped and shoveled until he explored, all four legs working busily. "Hooray!" he cried suddenly. "What have you found, Ratty?" asked Mole. "Come and see," said Rat, dancing a little jig. Mole took a look. "Well," he said, "it's a boot scraper." "So why dance around a boot scraper?" "But don't you see what it means?" cried Rat impatiently. "Of course I see what it means," replied Mole. "It means that some very careless person left his boot scraper lying in the middle of the wild wood, just where it's sure not to trip everybody. Very thoughtless." "Oh, Mole," cried Rat, "come and dig." Until he started working again, making the snow fly. Finally he uncovered a very shabby doormat. "What did I tell you?" exclaimed Rat. "Absolutely nothing whatever," replied Mole. "So you found another piece of junk. Do your little dancing and let's go." "Are you saying," cried Rat, "that this doormat doesn't tell you something?" Really, Rat? Said Mole. Let's be serious. Who ever heard of a doormat telling anybody anything? Rat couldn't believe how silly Mole was being. Quiet down and dig, he said. It's our last chance if we want to sleep where it's dry and warm. Rat dug like mad, and Mole helped, even though he thought Rat was being ridiculous. 10 minutes later, Rat called Mole over. Look, he said. In the side of what seemed to be a snowbank was a little door, painted dark green. There was a doorbell and a little brass plate that said Mr. Badger. Mole was so surprised and happy that he fell backwards into the snow. Rat, he cried, you're amazing. You figured it out. You knew that boot scraper meant there would be a doormat, and that the doormat meant there would be a door. Oh, if only I had your brains. Since you don't, interrupted Rat, you're probably going to sit in the snow all night and talk. Get up and ring the doorbell while I knock. Rat banged on the door, and Mole pushed the doorbell. Deep inside, they heard a bell ring. Mr. Badger, Chapter 4. They waited patiently for what seemed like a very short time. Finally, the door opened just enough to show a long nose and a pair of sleepy, blinking eyes. That's a good book.
Yes.
I think so, too. He's falling in his boat. Chapter 4. They waited patiently for what seemed like a very long time. Finally, the door opened just enough to show a long nose and a pair of sleepy, blinking eyes. Who's disturbing me on such a night? Speak up, said a gruff and suspicious voice. Oh, Badger, cried Rat. Let us in, please. It's me, Rat, and my friend Mole. And we've lost our way in the snow. Why, Ratty, exclaimed Badger in a very different voice. Come in, both of you. Well, I never lost in the snow. And in the wild wood, too? At this time of night? Come in. Badger wore a bathrobe and slippers. And he was carrying a candlestick in his paw. He had probably been on his way to the bed when they knocked. He patted both their heads. This is not the sort of night for small animals to be out, he said. Come into the kitchen. There's a fire there. Badger shuffled on in front of Rat, and Mole carrying the light. They followed him down a long, gloomy passage until they found themselves in a very large, warm kitchen. There was a red brick floor and a big fireplace with 2 high-back benches on either side. In the middle of the room was a long table with benches to sit on and an armchair at one end. There were rows of plates on the shelves, and from rafters overhead hung yams, bundles of dried herbs, onions, and baskets and eggs. It was a cozy, welcoming place. Badger sat them down on a bench to warm themselves at the fire and told them to take off their wet clothes and boots. Then he brought them bathrobes and slippers. Then he cleaned Mole's cut with warm water and bandaged it nicely. Soon Mole and Rat were so warm and content that the wildwood felt miles and miles away. When they were completely warm, Badger told him it was time for supper. He had brought all kinds of delicious food, and they ate and ate, telling Badger the whole story of how they'd come to his door. Badger sat in an armchair and listened, and never once said, I told you so. Mole began to feel very friendly toward him. After supper, the 3 of them sat around the fire and talked some more. Now then, Badger said, what's the news from your part of the world? How's old Toad? Oh, from bad to worse, said Rat. Another bad smash up last week. He's a terrible driver. How many has he had? Asked Badger gloomily. Smashes or machines? Asked Rat. Oh, well, after all, it's the same thing with Toad. This is the 7th. He's been in the hospital 3 times, put in Mole. Badger, said Rat. We're his friends. Shouldn't we do something? Badger thought hard. Of course you know I can't do anything now, he said finally. His friends understood. No animal is expected to do anything difficult during winter. Everybody knows winter is a time for resting. But when the spring comes, continued Badger, we'll teach him a lesson. Well, you're asleep, Rat? Not me, said Rat, waking up with a jerk. He's been asleep 2 or 3 times since supper, said Mole, laughing. He himself was feeling wide awake, though he didn't know why. The reason, of course, was that he had grown up living underground like badgers, so he felt at home in Badger's house. Rat was used to the breezy river, and being underground made him feel sleepy. Well, it's time for bed, said Badger. Come along, you 2. I'll show you to your room. He took them to the long room that was half bedroom and half barn. Badger's winter supplies took up half the room. Piles of apples, turnips, potatoes, baskets full of nuts and jars and honey. There were also 2 little white beds that looked soft and inviting. Mole and Rat jumped right in and fell asleep. They slept late. When they went down to breakfast the next morning, they found 2 young hedgehogs sitting on a bench at the table eating oatmeal out of wooden bowls. The hedgehogs dropped their spoon, rose to their feet, and ducked their heads respectfully when Mole and Rat came in. Sit down, said Rat pleasantly, and finish your oatmeal. Where did you come from? Did you lose your way in the snow? Yes, sir, said the older of the 2 hedgehogs. Me and little Billy here. We were trying to find our way to school, and of course we lost ourselves. And Billy got frightened, and at last we found Mr. Badger's back door and decided to knock. sir, for Mr. Badger is a kind-hearted gentleman, as everyone knows. I understand, said Rat, and he and Mole began to help themselves to bacon and eggs. And what's the weather like outside? You don't have to sir me quite so much, he added. Oh, very bad, sir. The snow is very deep, said the Hedgehog. You won't get out today. Where's Mr. Badger? Asked Mole. He's in his study, sir, replied the Hedgehog, and he said he was going to be very busy this morning and he shouldn't be disturbed. Everybody knew what that meant. Badger was taking a nap. The doorbell rang, and Rat sent Billy, the smaller hedgehog, to see who it was. There was some stamping in the hall, and then Billy came back with Otter, who threw his arms around Rat. Thought I might find you here, said Otter cheerfully. They were all worried about you along the riverbank this morning, but I knew that when people were in trouble, they usually went to Badger, so I came straight here, through the wildwood and in the snow. It was beautiful coming through the snow as the red sun was rising up against the black tree trunks. I could have played in the snow all morning. Weren't you at all nervous? Asked Mole. Nervous? Otter showed a gleaming set of strong white teeth as he laughed. Not me. Now how about some breakfast? I'm starving. Otter had just finished one full plate of bacon and eggs and was about to have some more when Badger came in, yawning and rubbing his eyes. It must almost be lunchtime, he said to Otter. Better stay and eat with us. You must be hungry this cold morning. Oh yes, replied Otter, winking at Mole. The sight of these greedy young hedgehogs stuffing themselves makes me feel positively famished. The hedgehogs were just beginning to feel hungry again after their oatmeal, looking timidly up at Mr. Badger, but were too shy to say anything. Here, you two youngsters, be off home to your mother, said Badger kindly. The rest of them sat down to lunch together. Mole found himself next to Mr. Badger, and since the two were talking about the river news, he decided to tell Badger how he felt at home. Once you're underground, Mole said, you know exactly where you are. Nothing can happen to you. You're the boss. And when you want to go up, you go up. Badger smiled. That's exactly what I say, he replied. There's no real peace or happiness except underground, and if you want to expand, why? A dig and a scrape, and there you are. If you decide your house is too big, you stop at a hole or two, and there you are again. And then there's no weather. Look at Rat, a couple of feet of floodwater, and he has to move. Take Toad. Toad Hall is the best house in these parts. But what if a fire breaks out? Where's Toad? No, up and outside is good for some things, but underground, that's my idea of home. Mole agreed, and Badger got very friendly. When lunch is over, he said, I'll take you all around this place of mine. I can see you'd appreciate it. After lunch, when the other two had settled themselves near the fire for a long talk
News iPad for that.
on the subject, Badger lit a lantern and told Mole to follow him. He gave him a complete tour of the main tunnels. Mole was very impressed. When they got back to the kitchen, they found Rat pacing restlessly. Being underground was getting on his nerves, and he was eager to get back to his river. He had already had his overcoat on. Come on, Mole, he said as soon as he saw them. We have to leave while it's daylight. Don't want to spend another night in the wild woods. It'll be all right, said Otter. I'm coming along with you, and I know every path with my eyes closed. I'll take care of you. You don't have to worry, Ratty, added Badger. My passages run further than you think, including some secret ones. You can leave by one of my shortcuts. Rat was ready to go, so Badger led the way along a damp tunnel that twisted and turned for what seemed like miles. At last they saw daylight ahead. Badger said a quick goodbye and pushed them through the opening. Then he rearranged the vines and leaves and covered a secret hole and turned back. Rat and Mole and Otter found themselves standing on the very edge of the wild wood. In front of them was a wide open field, and far off they could see the river shining in the last light of day. Otter led them across the snowy field. Mole glanced back once at the wild wood, and seeing its dark shadows made him even more sure that he was happy to live where he did, in the fields and meadows, that weren't quite so wild. He was happy to have met Badger, and he would always remember his adventures in the wild wood. But right then, he could hardly wait to get back to Rat's cozy house. Home Sweet Home, Chapter 5. Mole and Rat were on their way home late one December afternoon after a long day of exploring with Otter. It was a chilly gray day, and they were looking forward to being home. Rat was walking a little ahead of Mole, trotted along behind him, thinking about supper. It was dark by then, and he was very hungry. Suddenly Mole felt a certain tingle and smelled a familiar smell. He stopped dead in the tracks, trying to figure out what it was. Then it came to him. Home. His very own home. The day he'd left on spring cleaning day so many months ago. They must be passing near it. Oh, his happy home. He knew it wasn't anything fancy, but suddenly he wanted to see it. Ratty, he called, full of excitement. Come back. Oh, come on, Mole, replied Rat, still plodding along. Please stop, Ratty, begged poor Mole. You don't understand. It's my home, my old home. I just smelled it. And it's close. It's by here, really close. I have to go to it. I have to. Oh, Ratty, please come back. But when Rat was very far ahead by then, too far to hear what Mole was saying. He smelled snow in the air and he wanted to hurry home. Mole, we can't stop now, he called back. We'll come back tomorrow, whatever it is. He kept going without waiting for an answer. Poor Mole stood alone in the road, feeling torn in two directions. He was a loyal friend and did not want Rat to go on alone, but oh, his home was calling for him. Finally, he pushed himself forward, following Rat. It nearly broke his heart, but he did it. He caught up to Rat, who was chattering cheerfully about how they'd build a fire and have a lovely supper. Finally, he noticed how upset Mole was. Mole, he said, you seem tired. Let's sit down here. Well, we're almost home. Mole sank down on a tree stump and tried to keep from crying, but it was no use. He gave up. He cried and cried, sobbing his heart out. Rat felt terrible. He let Mole cry for a while, and then he said gently, what is it, old fellow? What's the matter? Poor Mole could hardly talk. I know it's a shabby, dingy little place, he sobbed, not like your cozy rooms or Toad's beautiful hall or Badger's great house. But it was my own little home, and I loved it, and I went away, and I forgot all about it, and then I smelled it, and I called you, and you wouldn't listen. Rat, you wouldn't turn back, and I had to leave it. I thought my heart would break. We could just have gone and had one look, Ratty, just one look, but you wouldn't turn back, Ratty. Oh dear. Think about it made him sob it all over again. He began to cry. Rat patted Mole gently on his shoulder. He waited until Mole's cries calmed down. He was sniffling. Then he got up and he said, well now, we really should be going, old chap. He set off going back towards the way they'd come. Where are you going, Ratty? Cried Mole. We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow, so come along. We'll need your nose to find it.
One more game. I was a new kid in level 10. In bed. Going straight to bed.
We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow, replied Rat, so come along, we'll need your nose to find it. Now Mole felt bad, and he tried to protest, but Rat wouldn't listen. Cheerfully, he led Mole along back to the spot where Mole had first stopped. Now, he said, use your nose. He stepped back and watched until suddenly Mole stood very still for a moment, then stuck out his twitching nose into the air. He ran forward a few steps, and then back, then frowned again. Rat followed him closely as Mole looked like a sleepwalker, crossed a ditch, scrambled through a hedge, and nosed his way through an open field. Suddenly, without warning, he dived, but Rat was watching, and he followed him right down the tunnel. Soon they were standing at Mole's little front door with a sign that said Mole End over the door. Mole took a lantern from a nail on a wall and lit it. Then Rat could see a neat little garden with benches and tables and statues and even a little fish pond. Mole looked happily at all of his little things. Then he led Rat inside and lit a lamp. When he saw how dusty and shabby everything looked, he threw himself into the chair, upset again. Oh, Ratty, he cried, why did I bring you to this cold little place on a night like this when you could have been home by now? Rat ignored him. He ran here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and closets, and lighting lamps and candles. What a perfect little house this is, he called out cheerily. Everything here and everything in its place. We need a good fire. I'll take care of that. You try to clean things up a bit. Let's go, old chap. Mole jumped up and dusted and polished, and Rat soon had a cheerful blaze roaring in the fireplace. He called to Mole to come and warm himself, but Mole had another fit of the blues. He plopped down on the couch. Rat, he moaned. What about supper? You poor, cold, hungry, tired animal. I've nothing to give you, not a crumb. Oh, come on, Rat said. Don't give up so easily. Let's go see what we can find. I'm sure there's something here. They hunted through the cupboards and drawers and found a can of sardines, some crackers, and a sausage. There we are, said Rat. No bread, groaned Mole. No butter, no steak, no ice cream, continued Rat, grinning. Let's be happy for what we do have. Plenty to eat and such a nice little house to eat it in. Why don't you tell me all about it while we set the table? Where did you get that nice old painting, for example? Once Mole began to talk about his house, he couldn't stop. While Rat set the table, Mole told him about how he'd built the house and went on with the story of how he'd gotten every piece of furniture and every lamp. Rat nodded and smiled, getting hungrier and hungrier. Finally, they were ready to sit down to eat, but just then there was a scuffling noise from outside. Next, Mole and Rat heard voices. Now, all in line, hold the lantern up a bit. Tommy, where's young Bill? We're all waiting. What's up? Asked Rat. I think it must be field mice, said Mole. They go around singing carols at this time of year. They always come to Mole End last. I used to give them hot drinks and even supper sometimes. It'll be like old times to hear them again. Let's see them, cried Rat. He ran to the door. There in the entryway were 8 or 10 little field mice, standing in a group, red scarves around their necks. As the door opened, one of the older ones said, "Now then, 1, 2, 3," and their shrill little voices rose on the air, singing an old Christmas carol. "Well sung, boys," cried Rat when they were done. "And now come in and warm yourselves by the fire and have something hot." "Yes, come in, field mice," cried Mole. "This is like old times. Shut the door after you. Pull up that bench to the fire. Now just wait while we—" "Oh, Ratty," he cried, "what are we doing? We don't have anything to give them." "You leave that to me," said Rat. He turned to the field mice and called out, "You with the lantern, I want to talk to you. Tell me, are there any shops open this late?" "Why, certainly, sir," replied the field mice. "Then listen," said Rat. "I want you to go right out and get—" His voice dropped, and Mole couldn't hear very much after that. The rest of the field mice sat in a row by the fire, too shy to talk much, until Mole asked about their younger brothers and sisters. Then that got them going. Meanwhile, Rat made some chocolate and passed it around. Hot chocolate. Before long, the first mouse came back with a very full basket of food. In a few minutes, supper was ready, and they sat down with Mole at the head of the table. Everyone talked and laughed and ate until they were full. After dinner, the mice headed home, carrying leftovers for their younger brothers and sisters. Mole and Rat sat by the fire and talked about their day, until Rat, with a tremendous yawn, said, "Mole, old chap, I'm ready for bed." He climbed into his bunk and tucked himself in and fell right away. Mole got into his bed too, but before he closed his eyes, he looked around at the room and all of his familiar things. He knew now that as much as he loved his adventurous new life, he still loved home too. It was good to think that he always had this place to come back to. Mr. Toad, Chapter 6. One day in spring, Badger arrived at Rat's door looking very serious. "The hour has come," he said. "What hour?" asked Rat. "Whose hour is more like it?" replied Badger. "It's Toad's hour. The hour of Toad. I said I would deal with him as soon as winter was over, and I'm going to deal with him today." "Hooray!" cried Mole. "I remember now. We'll teach him to be a sensible Toad." "This very morning," continued Badger, "another new and very powerful motor car will arrive at Toad Hall. We must go up there and rescue Toad right away." They set off up the road. Badger leading the way, and reached Toad Hall to find a huge, shiny, new motor car painted bright red, Toad's favorite color, standing in front of the house. Mr. Toad, wearing goggles and a cap and an enormous overcoat, came swaggering down the steps, pulling on his gloves. "Hello," he said cheerfully. "You're just in time to come with me for a—" He stopped when he noticed how serious his friends looked. Badger walked up the steps. "Take him inside," he said sternly. Mole and Rat pulled Toad up the stairs. "Now then," Badger said to Toad when the 4 of them stood together in the hall. "First of all, take those ridiculous things off." "I won't," replied Toad. "What is the meaning of this?" "Take them off him. Then, you two," ordered Badger. They had to lay Toad on the floor, kicking and calling them names to get his driving clothes off. When they stood him up again, he was calmer. "You knew it had to come to this sooner or later, Toad," Badger said. "You've ignored all of our warnings. You've gone on spending all your money, and you're giving us animals a bad name with your reckless driving and your smashes and your fights with the police. We animals never allow our friends to make fools of themselves beyond a certain limit, and you've reached that limit. Come with me into the living room and we'll have a talk. We'll see whether you come out of that room the same, Toad, than you went in." He took Toad firmly by the arm, led him into the living room, and closed the door behind him. "That's no good," said Rat. "Talking to Toad will never cure him. He'll say anything." He and Mole made themselves comfortable in armchairs and waited patiently. Through the closed door they could hear Badger's voice rising and falling. Soon they heard Toad crying. After a while the door opened and Badger came back in, leading Toad by the paw. Toad looked guilty and sad. "Sit down, Toad," said Badger kindly, pointing to the chair. "My friends," he went on, "I'm happy to tell you that Toad has at last seen the error of his ways. He is truly sorry for his behavior, and he has promised to give up motor cars forever." "That is very good news," said Mole. "Very good news indeed," agreed Rat. "If only—" He was looking very hard at Toad as he said this, and could not help thinking he saw a twinkle in his eye. "There's only one more thing to be done," continued Badger. "Toad, I want you to repeat before your friends here what you told me in the living room. First, you were sorry for what you've done, and how silly it was." There was a long pause. Toad looked around wildly while the others waited. "No," he finally said. "I'm not sorry, and it wasn't silly at all. It was wonderful." "What?" cried Badger. "Didn't you just tell me in there?" "Oh, yes, in there," said Toad impatiently. I've said anything in there." You were so convincing, Badger, but I've been thinking about it, and now I know I'm not sorry at all, so I really shouldn't say I am. Then you don't promise, said Badger, never to touch a motor car again? Certainly not, replied Toad. In fact, I faithfully promise that the very first motor car I see, beep beep, off I'll go in it. Told you so, didn't I? Rat said to Mole. Very well then, said Badger, rising to his feet. Since you won't change your mind, we'll have to try something else. You've often asked us three to come and stay with you in this handsome house of yours. Well, now we're going to. We're going to stay until you see things our way. Take him upstairs, you two, and lock him up in his bedroom. It's for your own good, Toady, you know, said Rat kindly, as Toad kicked and struggled, was hauled up by the stairs by his two faithful friends. Think what fun we'll have together once you get over this. We'll take care of everything for you till you're well, Toad, said Mole. No more fights with the police, Toad, said Rat as they pushed him into the bedroom. And no more weeks in the hospital, added Mole, turning the key on him. They went downstairs, Toad shouting at them through the keyhole, and sat next to Badger to decide what to do next. It's going to take a while, said Badger, sighing. I've never seen Toad so stubborn. But we'll wait until he gets out of his system. Meanwhile, I'll have to take turns watching him. So the three friends took turns sleeping in Toad's room at night, and they divided the day up between them. At first, Toad was impossible. He would set up a pair of chairs in the shape of a motor car and sit there making motor car noises until he crashed, somersaulting to the floor and knocking the chairs over. As time passed, he did this less and less, but he also seemed to get quieter and sadder. One morning, it was Rat's turn on duty. He took over from Badger, who was ready for a long walk. Toad's still in bed, he told Rat outside the door. He says he wants to be left alone and not to worry about him. Now you look out, Rat. When Toad's quiet like this, there's sure to be something up. I know it. Badger left for his walk, and Rat opened the door. How are you today, old chap? asked Rat cheerfully as he approached Toad's bed. At first there was no answer. Finally, a feeble voice replied, Thank you for asking, dear Ratty, but first let me tell you how you and Mole are. Oh, we're all right, replied Rat. Mole's going for a walk with Badger. We'll be out till lunchtime, so you and I will spend the morning together. Now jump up, don't lie there moping on a fine morning like this. Dear kind Rat, said Toad, if you only knew how far I am from jumping up. Don't worry about me. I hate being a burden to my friends, and I don't think I'll be one much longer. Then in a weak little voice, Toad tried to convince Rat that he was so sick he needed Rat to fetch a doctor from town. By the way, he added, I hate to bother you, but could you also call my lawyer? I think it might be time to make a will. Press the button. Press the button.
No!
What did you say? No.
Scared Rat. He hurried out of the room, not forgetting to lock the door carefully. He didn't know what he should do. He wished he could talk to Mole and Badger, but they weren't there. It's best to be on the safe side, he said to himself. Toad's been pretty sick before, but I've never heard him ask for a lawyer. If there's nothing really the matter, the doctor will tell him so. So he ran off to the village to find a doctor. Toad, who had hopped out of bed as soon as he heard the key turn in the lock, watched from the window until Rat disappeared from the driveway. Then, laughing, he dressed as quickly as possible in his nicest suit, filled his pockets with cash, knotted the sheets from his bed together, tied one end to the window frame, and scrambled out. He slid lightly to the ground and went off in the opposite direction, whistling a merry tune. It was a gloomy lunch for Rat when Badger and Bull came back, and he had to tell them what happened. They weren't very nice about it, to tell the truth, but Badger pointed out that was done, and that talking about it wouldn't help. Toad got away, he said, and the worst part about it is now he thinks he's so smart that he can get away with anything. Who knows what he'll do next? I think we should stay here for a while, and we can pick up the pieces. Little did Badger know how long it would be before Toad came home. Meanwhile, Toad was walking happily along the highway, very pleased with himself for the way he tricked Rat. He walked along thinking about how smart he was until he reached a little town, where he saw a restaurant. He went in, ordered some lunch, and sat down to eat. He was about halfway through his meal when he heard a familiar sound out on the street. Beep, beep. It came nearer and nearer until the car came to a stop near the restaurant. Toad was very excited. Then the people in the motor car came into the restaurant, talking about the wonderful drive they'd had in a wonderful car that wonderful morning. Toad listened until he couldn't stand it anymore. He slipped out of the room, paid his bill, and went outside to see the car. It can't hurt just to look at it, he told himself. The car was parked nearby without anyone around. Toad walked around it. I wonder, he said to himself, I wonder if this is the sort of car that starts easily. Before he knew what he had done, Toad had jumped into the car and started it up. He stepped on the gas and drove down the street faster and faster, forgetting everything else. He got into the highway and drove even faster. He was Toad again, Toad at his best, Toad the Terror. And before the day was over, he was Toad in jail, sentenced to 20 years behind bars. Toad's Adventures, Chapter 7. Toad was in jail, all alone in a dark, damp cell in the middle of a large castle-like building with many gates and guards. He had had plenty of time to think about what a mess he'd made of things, how smart and kind his friends had been, how thoughtless he had been. He deserved to be in jail. He refused to eat and spent all of his time crying and telling himself what a bad Toad he was. Now, the warden had a daughter who helped her father at the jail. She loved animals and felt sorry for Toad. She begged her father to let her take care of her. The warden was tired of Toad sulking and crying, so he was glad to say yes. Later that day, the warden's daughter brought Toad his dinner. Now cheer up, Toad, she said. Dry your eyes and be a sensible animal. Try to eat some dinner. See what I've brought? Toad lay on the floor, kicking and crying, but the stew she had brought him smelled very good. Maybe life wasn't all bad. He had his friends, and maybe they would help. The world was a wonderful place, and with luck he could be free to enjoy it someday. After all, he was Toad, smart, wonderful Toad. Everything would work out. Toad sat up and dried his eyes. He began to eat and began to talk about himself and his house and how important he was and how great his friends thought he was. The warden's daughter saw how happy it made him to boast. Tell me about Toad Hall, she said. It sounds beautiful. So he told her about the boathouse and the fish pond and the garden and about the dining hall and the fun the other animals had there when they were gathered around the table, and Toad was at his best, singing songs and telling stories. Then she wanted to know about his animal friends, and he told her all about them and how they lived. By the time she said goodnight, Toad was himself again. He sang a little song or two, then fell asleep and had all kinds of happy dreams. Toad and the warden's daughter became friends after that. She felt sorry for him. Of course he thought she was in love with him. One morning she said, Toad, listen, I have an aunt who is a washerwoman. There, said Toad graciously. That's all right. Nothing to be ashamed of. Oh, be quiet, Toad, said the girl. My aunt does the washing for all the prisoners here. She takes out the washing on Monday morning and brings it back on Friday evening. This is a Thursday. Now, this is what I think. You're very rich, and she's very poor. I think you could make a deal with her. You could lend her her dress and bonnet, and you could escape from the castle as the official washerwoman. You do look alike. Toad was insulted. But Mr. Toad, of course, Toad Hall can't go around disguised as a washerwoman. Then you can stay here as a toad, she replied. Toad knew when he was wrong. You are a good, kind, smart girl, he said, and I am a stupid Toad. I would love to meet your aunt. The next day, the warden's daughter brought her aunt to Toad. He gave her some money, and she gave him a dress, an apron, a shawl, and an old black bonnet. Now it's your turn, Toad, said the girl. Take off the coat of yours. You're fat enough as it is. Shaking with laughter, she helped Toad put on the clothes, then sent him away. The disguise worked perfectly. Toad was out of jail before he knew it. Still dressed in a washerwoman's clothes, he walked towards town. He headed straight for the train station to buy a ticket for a train home. That was when he realized he had left all of his money in the pocket of his coat back in jail. He tried to convince the ticket seller that he could pay later, after he'd been home, but it was no use. Toad watched the train get ready to leave without him, feeling terrible. How could this have happened? Now he would probably be caught again and thrown in jail. As he walked along next to the train, he came to the engine. The engineer was standing nearby. Hello there, said the engineer. What's the matter? You don't look happy. Oh, sir, said Toad, starting to cry. I'm a poor, unhappy washerwoman, and I lost all my money, and I can't pay for a ticket. And I have to get home tonight somehow. What am I going to do? That's too bad, said the engineer. Lost your money and can't get home? You probably have some kids waiting for you, too. Lots of them, sobbed Toad. And they'll be hungry and playing with matches and fighting. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, said the engineer. You say you're a washerwoman? Well, I'm an engineer, and it's dirty work. My wife gets awfully tired of washing all my clothes. If you'll wash a few shirts for me when you get home, I'll give you a ride on my engine. Toad scrambled up onto the cab of the engine, happy again. Of course, he had never washed a shirt in his life. Didn't know how, but he thought he could send the engineer some money instead. That would be just as good. Soon the train moved out of the station. As they picked up speed, Toad watched fields and trees and hedges and cows and horses fly by, and he knew every minute was bringing him nearer to Toad Hall, and good friends and money and a soft bed to sleep in, and good things to eat, and a chance to tell everyone how smart he had been. He began to skip up and down and sing, which surprised the engineer. Then Toad noticed that the engineer had a puzzled expression on his face. He was leaning over the side of the engine and listening hard. Then he stuck his head out the window to look back. "It's very strange," he said. "We're the last train tonight, but I could swear that I hear another train following us." Toad stopped skipping. He stopped singing. He didn't even want to think about who might be on the other train. The engineer kept watching. "Yes, it is another train," he said. "I think it's chasing us." Toad groaned. "They're catching up," cried the engineer, "and it's full of policemen all calling, 'Stop, stop, stop.'" Toad fell to his knees and begged, "Save me! Save me, dear kind Mr. Engineer. I'm not a simple washerwoman. I have no children waiting for me. I'm a Toad, the well-known Mr. Toad. I've just escaped from a terrible dungeon. If they catch me, I'll be locked up again." The engineer looked at him very sternly. "Now I'll tell the truth. What were you put in prison for?" "Nothing much," said Toad, blushing. "I just borrowed a motor car while the owners were at lunch, and I didn't mean to steal it." The engineer looked very serious and said, "You have been a very bad Toad, and I should turn you in, but you're in trouble and I won't desert you. I don't like motor cars for one, and I don't like being ordered by a policeman for another, and the sight of an animal in tears always makes me feel soft-hearted. So cheer up, Toad, I'll do my best. We might beat them yet." He pushed the train to top speed, but the other train was still catching up. Finally, he turned to Toad and told him that his best chance was to jump off the train just after it came out of the next tunnel. As soon as they came out of the next tunnel, Toad jumped, rolled down a short bank, picked himself up, and scrambled into the woods and hid. Then out of the tunnel burst the other engine, roaring and whistling, the policeman shouting, "Stop, stop, stop!" When they were past, Toad had a good laugh for the first time since he was thrown in jail. But then he soon stopped laughing when he realized it was now very late, dark and cold, and he was in an unknown forest with no money and no chance for supper, and still far from friends and home. He was afraid to leave the shelter of the trees, so he headed into the woods, even though they seemed dark and scary. Toad was tired and angry and hungry, too. Finally, he crawled inside a hollow tree, made himself a bed from branches and dead leaves, and fell asleep. Wayfarers All, Chapter 8. Meanwhile, Rat was restless, and he did not know exactly why. Summer was almost over, and the birds were beginning to fly south. Even though Rat loved his life on the river, he began to wonder, what would it be like to see those far-off places? Rat wandered through the familiar fields. How would it be to leave them behind? Feeling a little sad, he went back to the river. At least his dear old river never packed up and went away. Rat spotted a bird, a swallow to be exact, in a reeds. Soon it was joined by another, and then a third. Rat knew they were about to fly south. "What, already?" he asked, strolling up to them. "What's the hurry?" "Oh, we're not flying off yet, if that's what you mean," replied the first swallow. "We're only making plans. Talking over what route we're taking this year, and stop and so on. That's half the fun. Could you just stay for the rest of the year?" suggested Rat wistfully. "You have no idea what good times we have here while you're far away." "I tried staying 1 year," said another swallow. "For a few weeks it was fine, but when it got dark and cold, I couldn't stand it. Finally, I headed south alone. It was snowing hard when I left, and it was hard flying, but I'll never forget the feeling of the hot sun on my back as I finally flew down to the warm lakes that lay so blue below me. No, I learned my lesson. I'll never do that again." "Ah, yes, the call of the South," twittered the other two dreamily. "Oh, do you remember?" And forgetting Rat, they talked happily about their other home. Rat listened, and for the first time he was really tempted to go. He closed his eyes and thought about the sun and the warmth, and when he opened them again, the river seemed cold and gray. Then he shook himself. "Why do you ever come back?" he asked the swallows. "We love it here too," said the first swallow. "We get homesick, and we want to return to the fields and the meadows and the barns." They started talking again, but Rat walked away towards the nearby hill. He climbed up to look over his familiar view. Was there something else out there, somewhere else, that he might love even more? Then he heard footsteps. It was another rat, a very dusty one. The wayfarer said, "Hello," and sat down. He was thin and his face was wrinkled. He wore small gold earrings, a blue sweater, and a pair of old patched pants. He carried his things tied up in a blue cotton handkerchief. "I like the smell of clover and the sight of cows in the meadow," he said after he'd rested for a moment. "It's quiet here, very peaceful. You have a good life here by the river." "Yes, it is the life, the only life to live," answered Rat dreamily. He didn't sound quite as sure as he usually did. "That may be so," said the stranger, "but still, I'm on my way south. I'm a seafaring rat. I've been all over the world." Rat asked the stranger to tell him about his travels, and the sea rat talked for a long time, spinning tales of distant lands, beautiful exotic cities, and delicious food and drink of other countries. "That reminds me," said Rat, "you must be hungry. Will you have lunch with me? My hole's nearby." "That's kind of you," said the sea rat. "I'm hungry. But do you think you could bring it out here? I'll fall asleep if I go inside, but if we stay outside, I can tell you more stories." "What a good idea," said Rat. And he hurried back home to pick up a picnic basket with bread and sausage and other things he thought the sea rat would like. When he came back, they unpacked the food and ate and ate. They weren't quite so hungry anymore. The sea rat began to talk again, telling the story of how he'd found his way from sunny Spain all the way up this hill up north. Rat loved every detail of the story. Sea Rat went on and on about his travels and adventures, and Rat began to feel as if he were dreaming a beautiful, exciting dream. Finally, Sea Rat stood up. "And now," he said, looking into Rat's eyes, "I must start off again, on to the warm south for more adventure. And will you follow me, won't you? Adventure is calling you. Listen and come." His voice died away, and Rat sat staring at Sea Rat disappeared down the road. Without thinking, Rat got up and carefully packed the picnic basket. Without thinking, he went home, gathered together a few belongings, and put them in a knapsack. Over his shoulder, chose a walking stick, and stepped outside just as Mole appeared at the door. "Where are you off to, Ratty?" he asked, Mole surprised. "Going south with the rest of them," murmured Rat in a dreamy voice. "Adventure is calling me." He tried to walk past Mole, but Mole wouldn't let him. He saw something in Rat's eyes, something to frighten him. Rat was not himself. It was as if he had been hypnotized. Mole pulled Rat back inside. Rat struggled for a few moments, and then he gave in. Mole helped him to a chair where he sat, looked shaky and exhausted. Then Rat began to cry. Mole closed the door, threw Rat's knapsack into a closet, and sat down quietly near his friend, waiting for the tears to stop. Finally, Rat fell asleep, and Mole let him nap. When Rat woke up, he seemed more like himself again. Mole sat down and tried to cheer him up. "What happened?" he asked. Ratty tried to explain things, but it was hard. How could he explain the magic of Sea Rat's tales? The spell was broken now, and he could hardly believe how strong it had been. Mole could see that Rat still seemed sad, but even seemed to have lost interest in his beloved river. Mole began to talk about how nice it would be with fall coming, how the farmers were harvesting their crops, how the apples were ripening on the trees, and how everyone was looking forward to another snug winter in their cozy homes. Soon Rat sat up and joined in. His eyes were a little brighter, and he seemed interested in his old life again. Mole slipped away for a moment and came back with a pencil and some paper. "It's been quite a while since you wrote any poetry," he said. He knew Rat would feel much better if he wrote a few lines. Rat pushed the paper away at first. "What more left to write, buddy?" He killed a little later. Rat was scribbling away. And the Mole knew for sure that Rat would be all right. His dreams of going south would stay dreams while he stayed home on the river where he was truly happiest. The Further Adventures of Toad, Chapter 9. Toad woke up cold and stiff, and for a moment he wasn't sure where he was. Then he remembered he was free. He crawled out of the hollow tree where he'd spent the night and headed down the road, hoping to find someone who could give him directions home. After a while, he realized that there was a canal running next to the road, a man-made stream used for transportation. Soon he saw a horse plodding along the towpath, pulling a rope attached to a barge that floated on the canal. And steering the barge was a stout woman wearing a sunbonnet. "A nice morning, ma'am," she said to Toad. "It is, ma'am," responded Toad politely as he walked along the towpath next to her. "At least it's a nice morning for people who aren't in trouble like I am. I'm off to see my married daughter, who sent for me. I don't know what's wrong, but I fear the worst. Meanwhile, I had to leave my washing work behind and my children, and now I've lost all my money, and I don't know where I am." "Where does your married daughter live, ma'am?" said the barge woman. "She lives near the river, ma'am," replied Toad, "close to a fine house called Toad Hall." "Toad Hall? Why, I'm going that way," replied the barge woman. "You come along in the barge with me, and I'll give you a lift." She steered the barge close to the bow. Toad jumped in. "Toad's luck again," he thought. "I always come out on top." "So you're in the washing business, ma'am?" asked the barge woman politely as they glided along. "That's right," said Toad. "And do you enjoy washing?" asked the barge woman. "I love it," said Toad. "I'm never so happy as when I have both arms in a wash tub." "What good luck meeting you," said the barge woman. "What do you mean?" asked Toad nervously. "Well," replied the barge woman, "I like washing too, but I have trouble keeping up with it, especially when my husband goes off hunting, the way he did today, and leaves me to take care of the boat." "Oh, well," said Toad, "washing will keep. Forget it. And maybe your husband will catch something good for dinner." I just can't forget it, said the barge woman, but you'd be happy to know that there's a heap of dirty clothes in the corner of the cabin. You can have your fun washing them, and it'll be a real help to me. There's a tub and a soap and a bucket to haul up water from the canal. Then I'll know you're enjoying yourself instead of just sitting here bored. Why don't you let me steer, said Toad. Then you can do your washing your own way. Let you steer, replied the barge woman, laughing. It takes some practice to steer a barge right. Besides, it's boring work, and I want you to be happy. No, you do the washing, and I'll stick to the steering. Toad was cornered. He thought about trying to jump off the barge, but it was too far from the bank. Oh well, he thought, I suppose any fool can wash. He got the tub and soap and the dirty clothes and started in. But Toad couldn't figure out how to get the clothes clean. He splished and splashed and kept losing the soap in the sudsy water. His back was aching and his paws were getting all crinkly. Finally, the barge woman began to laugh. She laughed so hard she could hardly talk. I have been watching you all the time, she gasped. Some washerwoman you are. Toad lost his temper. You barge woman, he shouted. Don't you dare talk to me like that, washerwoman, indeed. I am a Toad, a very well-known, respected, distinguished Toad, and I will not be laughed at by a barge woman. The woman moved near to him and looked under his bonnet. Why, so you are, she cried. Well, I never. A nasty, crawly Toad on my nice, clean barge. Now that is a thing that I will not have. She grabbed Toad by one front leg and one back leg and threw him off the barge. He landed in the cold water with a splash and swam for shore, which wasn't easy with the washerwoman's dress tangled around his legs. The barge woman was still laughing as he climbed up the bank, and Toad felt angrier than ever. He ran after the barge, which had moved down the canal, until he caught up with the horse that was towing it. He unfastened the rope, jumped on the horse, and galloped off. Stop, stop, cried the barge woman as her barge ran to the bank and stopped moving. I've heard that song before, said Toad, laughing as he rode off. The horse was old and tired, and it could not gallop for long. Soon it was walking slowly along, but Toad didn't care. He wasn't angry anymore, just impressed with how smart he had been to get revenge in such a clever way. After a while, the horse stopped to eat, and Toad looked up to see an old gypsy wagon. There was a man sitting beside it, cooking a delicious-smelling stew in an iron pot over an open fire. When Toad smelled the food, he was suddenly hungrier than ever. The gypsy and Toad looked at each other. Then the gypsy spoke. Want to sell that horse of yours? Toad was surprised, but he saw right away that selling the horse might be a very good idea. What, he said? Sell this beautiful young horse of mine? Oh no, it's out of the question. Who's going to take the washing home to my customers every week? Besides, I love him, and he loves me. Anyway, he's a very fine horse, and you probably couldn't afford him. Toad paused. How much were you going to offer? The gypsy looked the horse over and then looked at Toad. A nickel a leg, he said. A nickel a leg, cried Toad. Well, let me just add that up. He climbed off the horse and sat down by the gypsy and counted on his fingers. At last he said, a nickel a leg? That comes to exactly 4 nickels. Oh no, I couldn't think of taking 4 nickels for this beautiful young horse of mine. Well, said the gypsy, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make it 5 nickels, but that's my last word. Toad sat and thought. He was hungry and had no money, and he was still far from home. In some ways, 5 nickels seemed like a lot. On the other hand, it did not seem like much to get a horse. Then again, the horse hadn't cost him anything, so whatever he got for a profit. At last he said firmly, look here, gypsy, I'll tell you what I'll do. This is my last word. You give me 5 nickels and as much breakfast as I can eat, and I'll give you my horse. The gypsy grumbled, but finally agreed. He gave Toad the money, then he filled up a plate with delicious stew, and Toad ate and ate until he couldn't eat any more. By the time Toad said goodbye to the gypsy and the horse, he felt much better. His stomach was full, his clothes were dry, and he had money in his pocket. As he walked along, he thought about his adventures and escapes. And when things seemed to be their worst, he'd always managed to find a way out. He began to swell with pride. Ho, ho, he said to himself as he marched along with his chin in the air. What a clever Toad I am. My enemies shut me out in prison. I walk out. They chase me with engines and policemen. I escape. I'm thrown into a canal by nasty fat woman. So what? I swim ashore. I steal her horse and I sell her for a whole pocket full of money and an excellent breakfast. Ho, ho, I am Toad, the handsome, the popular, the successful Toad. He got so puffed up that he made a song all about himself and sang it loudly as he walked. But Toad's pride was about to have a great fall. As he was walking along the highway, he heard something familiar. A motor car. Toad was excited. I'll flag him down, he thought, and he'll give me a ride. With luck, maybe I'll be driving to Toad Hall in a motor car. That will show Badger. He stepped right out into the road to stop in the motor car, but when it slowed down, he suddenly became very pale. His knees began to shake, and he fell over into the road in a heap. The car was the very one he had stolen from the restaurant. Oh, what a stupid Toad I've been. Now I'll end up back in jail, he moaned.
Hello?
Hello? Hi. The motor car came closer and stopped. Two men got out. Oh dear, this is very sad. Here's a poor old washerwoman's fainted on the road. Let's lift her into the car and take her to the village. Carefully, they lifted Toad in the motor car and propped him up with the soft cushions. Then they headed off again. Toad's courage came back as soon as he knew that the skies had fooled him. He opened his eyes.
Danger means.
This is dangerous.
Oh no means.
Oh, means uh-oh. Look, said one of the men. She's doing better already. The fresh air is doing her some good. How do you feel now, ma'am? Thank you kindly, sir, said Toad in a feeble voice. I'm feeling much better. Good, said the man. Now keep still and don't try to talk. I won't, said Toad. And I was just thinking that if I could sit in the front seat beside the driver, I could get more fresh air in my face. I would feel a little better. What a smart woman, said the man. Oh, of course you shall. So they helped Toad into the front seat. Toad was almost himself again by now. He sat up, looked around, and tried to resist the old temptations he was feeling. But then, of course, he gave in. He turned to the driver. Please, sir, he said, I wish you could let me drive the car for a while. I've been watching you carefully, and it looks so easy and so interesting, and I would like to be able to tell my friends that I once drove a motor car. The driver laughed. Bravo, ma'am. I like your spirit. Have a try. Toad scrambled into the driver's seat, took the steering wheel in hands, pretended to listen to the instructions. The man gave and started driving. He went very slowly and carefully at first. The men applauded, and Toad heard them saying, imagine a washerwoman driving a car so well the first time. Toad went a little faster, then a lot faster. He heard the men call out, be careful, washerwoman. But soon Toad was going full speed. The rush of air in his face and the hum of the engine made him almost lose his mind with happiness. Washerwoman, ha, he shouted recklessly. Ho, ho, I'm Toad the motor car snatcher, the prison breaker, Toad who always escapes. Now you'll know what driving really is, for you are in the hands of a famous, the skillful, the fearless Toad. This is a Toad who stole our car, one of the men shouted. Grab him, we'll take him back to the police station. They should have remembered to stop the motor car somehow before doing something like that. The car crashed through a hedge and into a muddy little pond. Toad picked himself up and ran off as fast as he could, scrambling through the hedges, jumping ditches, pounding across fields till he was breathless and tired and had to slow down. When he got his breath back, he started to think about what had happened. He began to giggle. And then he began to laugh. And he laughed till he had to sit on the hedge. Ho, ho, he cried. Toad again. Toad, as usual, comes out on top. Clever Toad, great Toad, good Toad. Then he burst into song until suddenly he saw two large policemen running towards him. Toad started running again. Oh my, he gasped. What an idiot I am, singing songs again. He looked back and saw the policemen were catching up to him. He ran and ran, but they kept getting closer. He was running so fast that he didn't see the river until he had fallen into it and was swept away. He bobbed along, trying to grab the reeds along the bank, but the current was too strong. Oh my, gasped poor Toad. I'll never steal a motor car again. I'll never sing a boastful song. Finally, he saw a big dark hole in the bank just above his head, and he reached up with a paw and grabbed the edge and held on. Then a twinkle appeared from deep in the dark hole. As it came closer, Toad saw it was a face. A familiar face, a little brown face with whiskers, small neat ears, and thick silky hair. It was Rat. Toad learns the worst. Rat grabbed Toad and hauled him out of the river. Oh, Ratty, Toad cried. I've been through so much since I last saw you. I got through it with courage and intelligence. Just wait until you hear. Toad, said Rat, you go upstairs right now and take off that old cotton rag that looks as if it once belonged to some poor washerwoman, and wash yourself, and put on some clothes. Now stop swaggering and arguing and go. When Toad had changed, he joined Rat for lunch. While they ate, Toad told Rat about his adventures, making himself sound like a hero, and making all the worst parts sound like fun and exciting. When he was finally finished, Rat was quiet for a moment. Then he said, now Toadie, I don't want to make you feel bad, but seriously, don't you see what an idiot you've been making of yourself? You're telling me that you've been handcuffed, imprisoned, starved, chased, terrified out of your life, insulted, and thrown into water. Where's the fun in that? And all because you had to go steal a motor car. You know, you've never had anything but trouble for motor cars from the moment you first saw one. It's one thing to drive them, fine, but why do you have to steal them? When Rat had finished, Toad sighed and said, "You're right, Ratty. How smart you always are. Yes, I've been an idiot. I can see that. But now I'm going to be a good Toad. We'll have a quiet chat, and then I'll go ahead and walk down to Toad Hall and settle back in. I've had enough of adventures, and I just want to live a quiet life at home." "Walk down to Toad Hall?" cried Rat. "What are you talking about? Are you all telling me you haven't heard?" "Heard what?" said Toad, turning pale. "Are you telling me," shouted Rat, "that you haven't heard about the Stoats and the Weasels?" "What, the Wild Wooders?" cried Toad, trembling. "And how they've taken over Toad Hall?" continued Rat. Toad began to cry. "When you were away," Rat said, trying to be polite about Toad being in jail, "well, everyone was talking about it, not only along the river, but even in the wild wood. The wild wood animals said you served you right and that you never could come back again. Never." Toad just nodded. "But Mole and Badger," Rat went on, "they kept saying that you could come back soon. They didn't know exactly how, but somehow." Toad began to sit up in his chair and smile a little. "So they moved their things to Toad Hall," Rat told him, "and planned to stay there and have it ready for you when you came back. They didn't guess what was going to happen, but they were suspicious. Now I come to the worst part of my story. One dark night, when it was raining cats and dogs, a band of weasels armed to the teeth crept up to the front entrance of Toad Hall. At the same time, some ferrets got into the backyard and offices, and some stoats took over the greenhouse." Toad looked shocked. "But there was more," the Rat went on. "Mole and Badger were sitting by the fire in the living room when those bloodthirsty villains broke down the doors and rushed in upon them from every side. Badger and Mole fought as hard as they could, and what was the use? They were taken by surprise. And what it can two animals do against hundreds? The Stoats and the Weasels, ferrets, beat them up and threw them out in the cold and rain. And the Wild Wooders have been living in Toad Hall ever since," finished Rat. "They lie in bed half the day and make a mess and eat your food and make bad jokes about you. And they're telling everybody that they've come to stay." "Oh, they have," said Toad, getting up. "I'll see about that." He marched down the road, talking angrily to himself until he got to near his front gate. But there was a ferret guarding the gate, and he would not let Toad pass. He went back and told Rat. "What did I tell you?" said Rat. "It's no good. They have guards everywhere. You'll just have to wait." But Toad was not ready to give up. He got out of the boat and rowed up the river to Toad Hall. When he saw his old home, he slowed down to look around. Everything seemed quiet. The house looked the same as always. As if they were waiting for him to come back, quietly paddled closer. He was passing under the bridge when crash. A huge stone dropped from above, smashed through the bottom of the boat. The boat sank, and Toad splashed around in the deep water. Looking up, he saw two Stoats leaning over the bridge, laughing at him. The Toad swam to shore and went back to tell Rat what had happened. "Well, what did I tell you?" asked Rat. "And now look what you've done. Ruined my boat and that nice suit of clothes." "Really, Toad?" Toad knew he'd been bad. He apologized to Rat for losing the boat and spoiling his clothes. And he promised to listen to Rat and not do anything until Rat told him to. "All right," said Rat. "Sit down and have some supper. Mole and Badger will be here soon, and we'll talk about what to do." "Ah, yes," Mole said. "And Badger. Almost forgot about them. What happened to them?" "Nice of you to ask," said Rat. "While you were riding around in the country in expensive motor cars, those poor two animals have been camping out, watching over your house, keeping an eye on the Stoats and the Weasels, and planning how to get your property back for you. You don't deserve to have such true and loyal friends, Toad. Someday when it's too late, you'll be sorry that you didn't appreciate them when you had them." "I am an ungrateful Toad, I know," sobbed Toad. Let me go out and find them. I'll go out into the cold, dark night and hold on. Didn't I just hear the clink of dishes on a tray? Supper's here. Come on, Ratty." Rat remembered that poor Toad had been eating prison food for a long time, so he followed him to the table. They just finished their meal when there was a heavy knock at the door when Rat opened it and walked Mr. Badger. He looked as if he hadn't been home in a long time. His shoes were muddy and his clothes were wrinkled. He came up to Toad, shook his paw, and said, "Welcome home, Toad." "Oh, what am I saying? Home, huh? This is terrible homecoming. Poor Toad." Soon there was another knock. This time it was Mole, who also looked very shabby. "Hooray! Here's old Toad," cried Mole, beaming. "We never dreamed you would turn up so soon. You must have escaped," you scored Toad. Rat grabbed Mole's elbow, but it was too late. Toad was already puffing with pride. Smart me. Oh no, he said. I'm not really smart. I just broke out of the strongest prison in England, that's all. And captured a train and escaped on it. And that's all. And disguised myself and went around fooling everybody. That's all. Oh no, I'm just silly old Toad. I'll tell you one or two of my little adventures, Mole, and you can just judge for yourself. Well, said Mole. Why don't you talk while I eat? Toad bites into breakfast. Tell us how things look at Toad Hall, Rat said quickly to Mole, and what you think we should do now that Toad is back. It's a bad situation, Mole said gloomily, and I don't know what to do. Badger and I keep walking around the house, and the weasels and scousers laugh at us. Well, said Rat, I've been thinking about it, and I think Toad should. No, cried Mole, you're wrong. He should. I won't, shouted Toad. It's my house, and I'll decide. By this time, they were all talking at once. Then Badger spoke up. Be quiet, all of you. They all fell silent. Toad, he said severely, you bad little animal. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? What do you think your father, my old friend, would have said if he knew what you'd been up to? Toad began to sob. There, said Badger more kindly. Stop crying. I know you're going to be a better Toad from now on. But what Mole says is true. The stouts are on guard. Then it's all over, sobbed Toad again. I'll never see my dear Toad Hall. Cheer up, Toady, said Badger. I haven't said my last word. I'm going to tell you a secret. Toad sat up and dried his eyes. He loves secrets. There's an underground passage, said Badger, that leads from the riverbank right up to the middle of Toad Hall. Oh, come on, Badger, said Toady. I know every inch of Toad Hall, inside and out. There's no such thing. My young friend, said Badger, your father was a friend of mine, and he told me things that you wouldn't have dreamed of telling you. He discovered the passage, and he thought it might come in handy someday in case of trouble or danger, so he showed it to me. Don't tell me my son about it, he said. He's a good boy, but he can't keep it secret. If he's ever in real trouble, you may tell him. Toad looked surprised, and he smiled sheepishly. Well, he said, I guess my father was right. I do like to talk and tell secrets. Anyway, Badger, how will this passage of yours help us? It's going to be a big dinner party at Toad Hall tomorrow night, Badger told them. It's the Chief Weasel's birthday, I believe, and all the weasels will be gathered together in the dining hall, eating and drinking, laughing and carrying on. But the guards will be posted as usual, said Rat. Exactly, said Badger. That is my point. The weasels will trust in their guards, and that is where the passage comes in. Leads right up to the pantry to the dining hall. Aha, that squeaky board in the pantry, said Toad. Now I understand it. We shall creep out quietly into the pantry, cried Mole. Big sticks, shouted Rat, and rush in upon them, said Badger. And whack them and send them on their way, cried Toad happily. Well then, said Badger. Our plan is settled. It's getting late. We'll make the rest of our plans tomorrow morning. The next day, Toad came back to breakfast late, just as Mole came back from the secret errand.
Blah.
Blah.
Stop.
Oh. I love you.
No.
No. I've been having such fun, Mole told the others. I've been teasing the Stokes. I hope you've been careful, Mole, said Rat. Oh, yes, said Mole. I got the idea when I found that old washerwoman dress Toad came in yesterday, hanging out to dry. I put it on and went to Toad Hall. The guards were on the lookout, of course. Good morning, gentlemen, I said. Want any washing done today? They looked at me and said, Go away, washerwoman. We don't do any washing on duty. Or any other time, I asked. Ha ha ha. Wasn't I funny, Toad? Silly animals, said Toad. He was jealous, to tell the truth. He'd wished he'd have thought of doing that. The sergeant told me to run away, said Mole, and I said, Run away? It won't be me running away pretty soon. Oh, Mole, how could you, said Rat. Badger put down the newspaper.
Do alphabet works, yes or no?
No. I could see them looking at one another. Mole went on, and the sergeant said to them, Never mind her, she doesn't know what she's talking about. It is. Oh, don't I, said I. Well, let me tell you this. My daughter, she cleans for Mr. Badger, and she heard that 100 bloodthirsty badgers are going to attack Toad Hall this very night from the fields. 6 boatloads of rats will come up the river and land in the garden, and a gang of toads will come through the orchard. You better get out of here while you have the chance. Then I pretended to run away, but I came back and spied on them. They were all so nervous. They were running around and giving orders to one another and acting all confused. And I heard them saying to one another, That's just like the weasels. They'll be having a great time while we ferrets and stoats have to stay out here on guard and get attacked by badgers. Oh, you idiot, Mole, cried Toad. You've spoiled everything. Mole, said Badger quietly. I think you have more sense in your little finger than some other animals have in their whole fat bodies. You've done a great job. Good Mole, smart Mole. Now Toad was wild with jealousy, especially since he couldn't understand what Mole had done that was so smart. Before he could say anything, Badger said it was time for lunch. After they ate, Badger suggested a nap since they were going to have a busy night, and he headed for his armchair. Rat was too nervous to sleep, so he paced around pretending to prepare for their surprise attack. Mole, maybe to make up with Toad, asked to hear all of Toad's adventures, so Toad spent a very pleasant afternoon, boasting about all he'd done since he'd last seen Mole. The Return of the Hero, Chapter 11. When it began to get dark, the four friends all met in a parlor. Finally, they were ready to go, and Badger said, "Follow me. Mole first, because I'm very pleased with him. Rat next, Toad last. And listen, Toady, don't chatter too much, or I'll send you back." Toad didn't want to be left out, so he stayed quiet. Badger led them along the river, then suddenly swung himself over the edge of the bank into a hole in the riverbank. Mole and Rat followed silently, swinging themselves into the hole. But when it was Toad's turn, of course, he slipped and fell into the water with a loud splash and squeal. His friends hauled him out, but Badger was angry and told him that the next time he made a fool of himself, he would definitely be left behind. They were finally in the secret passage, and the expedition had really begun. It was cold and dark and damp and narrow, and poor Toad began to shiver, partly from fear and partly because he was so wet. But he did his best to keep up with the long trip through the tunnel, and finally Badger said, "We should be under the dining hall by now." Then they heard, over their heads, the sound of people shouting and cheering and stamping on the floors and hammering on tables. Toad was frightened, but Badger just said, "They certainly are having fun, those weasels." They went on until the noise seemed even closer. "Hooray, hooray," they heard, and the stamping of little feet on the floor and the clinking of glasses as little fists pounded on the table. "What a time they're having," said Badger. "Come on." They hurried through the passage until it ended, and then they found themselves standing under the trapdoor that led into the pantry. Badger said, "Now, boys, all together." The four of them put their shoulders to the trapdoor and heard it heave back. They hoisted one another into the pantry. Now there was only a door between them and the dining hall. Then they heard a weasel making a funny speech. "I would like to say one word about our kind host, Mr. Toad. We all know Toad, good Toad, modest Toad, honest Toad." The rest of the weasels were laughing and laughing. "Let me at him," muttered Toad, grinding his teeth. "Hold on a minute," said Badger. "Get ready, all of you." "Let me sing you a little song," went on the weasel, "all about Toad." And he began to sing a mean song. Badger took a firm grip on a stick and looked all around at the others and said, "The time has come. Follow me." He threw the door open wide. What a squealing and squeaking and screeching filled the air. The terrified weasels dove under the tables and jumped out of the windows. The ferrets ran for the fireplace and got jammed in the chimney. Tables and chairs were knocked over and glasses and china crashed on the floor. It was no wonder the four friends were a frightening sight. Mighty Badger, his whiskers bristling, his great stick whistling through the air. Mole, black and serious, holding up a stick and shouting his war cry, "A mole, a mole!" Rat ready for a fight, and Toad, swollen to twice his ordinary size, leaping into the air with Toad whoops. The whole thing ended quickly. Up and down the whole length of the hall, they walked the four friends, yelling and shouting and whacking their sticks. In 5 minutes, the room was cleared, except for a few weasels they kept for prisoners. Badger told Mole to go check on the guards. Mole jumped out the window, and Badger told the other two to sit at the table and find some food. "We need dinner," he said. "Come on, Toad. We've got your house back for you, and you don't even offer us a sandwich?" Toad wished Badger had noticed what a brave fighter he had been, but he didn't say anything. He just looked around and found some good food that hadn't been ruined in the fight. Just as they were sitting down to eat, Mole came back. "It's all over," he reported. "From what I can tell, when the stoats heard the noise from the hall, they ran away." "Excellent animal," said Badger. "Now there's just one more thing I want to do. Mole, I want you to take those fellows on the floor there upstairs with you and have some bedrooms cleaned out and made really comfortable. Clean sheets and all. Then you can come have supper." "I'm very pleased with you, Mole." Mole picked up a stick, lined up his prisoners, and marched them upstairs. After a while, he came back and said every room was ready. Then he pulled his chair up to the table to eat. Toad put all of his jealousy behind him and said, "Thank you, dear Mole, for all your trouble tonight, and especially for your cleverness this morning." They finished their supper happily and went to bed to rest on clean sheets, glad to have one back Toad Hall. At breakfast the next morning, Badger told Toad that he really should have a dinner party to celebrate getting his house back. In fact, Badger told Toad he should write out the invitations that very day. "Now sit down at the table, write invitations to all of our friends, And if you stick with it, we'll get them out before lunch. I'll help by ordering all the food for the party. What? Cried Toad. Stay indoors and write a lot of stupid letters in the morning like this? I want to go around my property and make sure everything's all right and swagger about and enjoy myself. No, thank you. Wait a minute. Why, of course, dear Badger, it shall be done. I'll give up this morning in honor of our friendship. Badger looked at Toad very suspiciously, but Toad just smiled. And as soon as Badger left the room, Toad hurried to the table. He had thought of a wonderful idea while he was talking. He would write the invitations, he would make sure to mention his leading part in a fight, and he would hint at his adventures on the side of each invitation. He would list a sort of program of entertainment for the evening, something like Speech by Toad. There would be other speeches by Toad during the evening. Lecture by Toad. Contents: our prison system, the waterways of old England, horse stealing, back to the land, a typical English squire. Song by Toad, composed by Toad himself. Other compositions by Toad will be sung in the course of the evening by the composer. The idea made him very happy, and he worked very hard and got all the letters finished by noon. Just then a weasel showed up at the door, asking if there was anything he could do. Toad gave him the letters and told him to deliver them as fast as he could. When the other animals came back for lunch after a morning on the river, Mole looked at Toad, expecting him to be mad about having to work all morning. But instead, Toad looked so happy that Mole began to suspect something was up. Rat and Badger did too. As soon as lunch was over, Toad said he was heading off to the garden. He planned to work on some ideas for his speeches. But Rat grabbed his arm. Toad tried to get away, but Badger grabbed his other arm, and he knew they'd caught him. The two animals took him into a small room, shut the door, and put him into a chair. Then they both stood in front of him while Toad sat glaring back at them. Now, Toad, said Rat, it's about dinner. I'm sorry to speak to you like this, but we want you to understand clearly once and for all that there are going to be no speeches and no songs. Try to understand, we're not arguing with you, we're just telling you. Toad saw that he was trapped. They knew him too well. His dream was over. Couldn't I sing just one little song, he begged? Not one little song, replied Rat firmly, even though he felt terrible when he saw how disappointed Toad was. Toady, you know your songs are all boasting. It's for your own good. You know you have to turn over a new leaf sooner or later, and this seems like the perfect time to do it. Toad thought for a long time. Finally, he raised his head. You have won, my friends, he said sadly. It was a small thing that I asked, but you're right and I'm wrong. From now on, I will be very different, Toad. Oh, what a hard world. And wiping the tears from his eyes, he left the room. Badger, said Rat, I feel terror about this. What about you? Oh, I know, said Badger gloomily, but it had to be done. Toad has to live here. Do you want him to be laughed at forever by the stoats and weasels? Of course not, said Rat. And speaking of weasels, it's lucky we met that little weasel just as he was leaving. I read one or two, and they were just awful. I took them all, and Mole was writing new ones. At last, it was almost time for dinner. Toad was in his bedroom thinking. Soon he began to smile. Then he started giggling. Finally, he got up, locked the door, pulled the curtains across the windows, took all the chairs in the room and put them in a circle and stood in front of them. Then he bowed, coughed twice, and began to sing. He sang the most boastful song ever, all about his heroic homecoming. He sang loudly and happily. And when he was done, he sang it all over again. He gave a long sigh, then he straightened his bow tie and went downstairs to greet his guests. All the animals cheered when he came in and crowded around to congratulate him, but Toad just smiled and said it was nothing. Badger was the mastermind. Mole and Rat did all the work. I just helped a little. The animals were surprised that Toad was not boasting. They gave him even more attention, and Toad discovered that he liked that. Badger had ordered all the best food, and the dinner was a great success. There was a lot of talking and laughing, but Toad was very quiet. Some of the younger animals tried to make him sing a song or a speech, but he wouldn't. Toad really had changed. From then on, the four animals led a peaceful life. Toad sent a pretty gold necklace to the warden's daughter with a nice letter. He also thanked the train engineer and even sent some money to the bar woman to pay for a horse. Sometimes, on long summer evenings, the friend would take a walk together in the wild wood. It was a safe place for them now. The mother weasels would tell their young, look, baby, there goes the great Mr. Toad. And that was gallant Rat and a wonderful fighter walking with him. And here comes the famous Mr. Mole you've heard so much about. And when the children were having temper tantrums, their mothers would tell them the terrible Badger would get them if they didn't behave. Of course, Badger loved children, so it wasn't quite true, but it always worked. The end. What did you think about that book, John Paul?
Good.
I did too. Right there.
Oh, that's not nice.